Somebody turned 50 years old this year, and it wasn't me. This lady right here turned 50. Yeah, the buck 110. And in honor of that significant birthday, her manufacturer, Buck Knives, released this beauty. Looks interesting, doesn't it? Stay tuned, my friends. We will talk about them. Hi, gang. Rob here. It is the evening of 10 December 2014, and this is a video that I looked forward to making with unbelievably great expectations, because it's pretty significant, isn't it? If you guys have been paying attention to the TheApostleP channel, you know that in a video, not quite 2 weeks ago, I named this knife the Buck 110, born in 1964, this particular one 1980. The #1 most significant folding knife of the last half century. So imagine my glee when I found out that this year, and I found this out right after I made that video, in honor of the 50th anniversary of the Buck 110, Buck Knives Inc. released some anniversary models. They named them after streets on which their factories have been located. This particular one, the Lochsa, which is the current residence of Buck Knives Incorporated, represents some rather interesting evolutionary changes in the 110, doesn't it? You can see them without me even pointing them out. Oh, wow. You can imagine my excitement. I mean, it was like a couple days after I made that that most significant knives video of the last 50 years that I saw this online. I thought, oh my gosh. Oh, we'll get into why that was a bad thing. I thought, oh my gosh, it's a Buck 110 with thumb studs, a pocket clip, and not just a pocket clip, but a tip-up, reversible left or right pocket clip, G10 handle scales, contoured even, a nickel-silver frame, stainless lock bar, stainless backspacer, and a blade of what? S30V with a Boss heat treat, and these were made 500 of them, and I got number 65, the year of my birth. Isn't that something? Well, guys, I was so excited to see these. Man, they were priced when they were made well north of $200. I got this one from an eBay seller for just under $200, which is a lot of money for a Buck 110, a production Buck 110, even limited production though it may be. They made 500 of them, they numbered them, they released them as an anniversary model, and frankly, Buck is cashing in on the birthday. Let's talk about what we got. Yes, we're going to talk about the dimensions of a Buck 110. We got a blade 3 3/4 inches long, classic clip Bowie shape, nicely hollow ground, satin finished of CPM S30V with the Boss heat treat. We have a handle length of 5 7/8 inches, which gives us an overall length of 9 5/8. Weight on this guy, 6.8 ounces. Does that sound heavy? Perhaps. But this one is 7.7 ounces. So 9/10 of an ounce lighter by taking some weight out of this knife in the form of these back bolsters. Going with the G10 instead of brass and walnut. Even the addition of the pocket clip, we still save an ounce almost. I'm going to get this older one out of the picture so we can focus on this one. And as I said, not only do we have a pocket clip, but we also have thumb studs. Guys, just let's take a look at how beautiful this thing is before I start getting into it. I mean, how many of us haven't wanted in our lifetimes, if you're my age or older maybe, how many of you haven't wanted a buck 110 folding hunter that you could clip to your pocket and open one-handed? I mean, gosh, I know I have. You know, that's why I like this knife, the Cold Steel Recon 1. Heavy-duty lockback, pocket clip, thumb studs. And here we got it. And let's look at its beauty. You'll notice as we take a quick flyby, I have sharpened it and I have added a sharpening notch. Much in the same shape as a traditional slip joint, and here's why. You'll notice the way that cutting edge starts, there's a little bit of recurve and very hard to put a consistent edge on at the base. This one I'm never going to put a sharpening notch in because it's 34 years old and it's pristine. And although this is an anniversary limited production knife, I perceive this one to be much more collectible because it's honestly collectible, not made to be collectible, and we'll talk about that as we go. But look at its beauty. Look at the precision of the grinds. The swedges are dead symmetrical. Look at those pretty nifty thumb studs. They sure look good, don't they? Too bad they're not. We'll get to that. As I said, the frame is all nickel silver and it is satin finished. It's exactly 800 grit satin, and I'll tell you why I know that as we go. Open, the fit and finish along the spine of the knife is perfect. The lock bar is flush front to back. As is the back spacer. Look at that subtle contrast from the nickel silver frame to the stainless steel back spacer. Just very subtle. Can't quite get that to focus for you guys. There you go. Very nice. Nice inlaid buck shield and kind of an antique pewter. It's a 3-rivet knife. These two hold in the back spacer. This one, probably mostly for looks, but holds the front of the G10 to the frame. As I said, the pocket clip is reversible. I'm a little puzzled why they gave us 6 screws. There are brass inserts, threaded inserts, in the G10 handle scales, much like you see in a griptilian. So those screws do not screw into that thin nickel silver frame. They screw into brass epoxied nuts in the G10. Very good idea. Not sure why we have the extra 3. I guess just for symmetry. But the knife looks just fine with those out. You can actually see the brass inserts if you take those out. The G10 is textured about like a Spyderco Military. Not super grippy like a Cold Steel, but still you get some traction. And then the layers, of course, revealed as it contours down. There's a little bit of an hourglass shape, full thickness here. Then we sort of come into a plunge, and then it flares back out at the end of the bolster. You can barely see that. just very nice to look at, and superb in hand. The extra grip of that G10 is just right where you want it to be. Guys, if you haven't held one of these knives, even a current 110 that looks like this, if you haven't held one in your hand and just really paid attention to how it feels, you're really missing out. There's a reason I said in the most significant folders video that the 110 was the first tactical folder. It lends itself, the old one lends itself to being modified to do that. The new one, the Lochsa, let's see. Really? Huh. What was that? That was the sound of a buck 110 snapping open. Yes. Haven't we all just lived most of our knife lives waiting for that moment, huh? When we could do that? Oh, it does take some wrist. The placement of the thumb studs is one of the suspect elements of the knife. They're, well, look. They're right against the frame. And they're very close to the pivot, which the reason why I'm assuming is to keep that thumb stud as close to the pivot as possible so it's not in the way of the cutting edge. It doesn't inhibit any slicing. Great idea, but it's so hard to get. I'm making it look easier than it is. If your hands are a little dry or a little slippery, they don't really want to get those thumb studs. My hands are kind of warm and a little clammy right now, so grip is not an issue. It's more difficult than it looks. Leave it at that. But you know, if they would have just moved it, if they'd have moved that stud an eighth of an inch that way, we still wouldn't lose much cutting edge, and we'd have a lot more room to slip our thumb in there and get to it. But my hand's getting used to it, obviously. So that was one issue that sort of bothered me. And guys, I wanted to be so excited about this knife. I wanted to make this video and come on and tell you the 110 is back, better than ever. It's going to change the way we perceive buck. It brings the 110 into the 21st century. It's a competitive knife again. But I can't tell you that. Here's why. Thumb stud placement issue. The nature of the thumb stud, although it looks great, and isn't a horrible design. Oops. It is pretty hard to get to, and in my efforts to get to know it, the first day I had this knife, the thumb studs came loose. I could shake the knife and the thumb studs would rattle. In fact, they're not getting loose again. But they're not threaded, and it's not a one-piece stud, obviously. You can see how they're small next to the blade, and then they get bigger and then smaller again. They're kind of pressed together. I was able to firm them up again by putting them in my wood-lined vise and just repressing them. That was a bit of a disappointment. You know, thumb studs should not come loose in one day of use in a $200 knife. The pocket clip I have no issues with. It works great. Adequate retention, easy enough to get in and out of pocket. And the knife comes out of pocket so well. You know, this is essentially how you grip the knife in the pocket to pull it out. And look how the horn of that pommel fits that grip. You know, your thumb is inside your pocket in this area. Your index finger just comes around, and look, I'm like locked up. It's great extraction design. Great extraction design. About that much of the knife sticks out of your pocket. Not bad at all. My only complaint about the clip is it's stonewashed, and every single other surface that's metal on this knife is satin. I don't quite get that. I guess to hide scratches, I may satin that clip. It's kind of a fine stonewash anyway. I don't know how well that shows up. Love the anvil in the clip. And I love the fact that they put shields on both sides of the knife. Even though the clip obscures one, you know, the Vantage Pro in its original form had buck shields inset in the handles as well. But if you switch the clip over for left-hand carry, you covered up the only shield on the knife so that the show scale for a lefty had nothing on it. I love the way that they did this. That's great. All right, now let's get to the problems. I watched one video, and it's actually from a subscriber of mine, John Bovey, and I noticed when I was watching his video that the lock bar, when the knife is closed, focus baby, actually sat proud. Can you see that? There, you can see just a little proud in the back. And then if you come up front, well, it's a little sunken, which I think is odd. So the least spring tension possible when that knife closes is applying. And that's a problem because the closed blade stop on a buck 110 is this piece of tang against the lock bar. Now when I close this knife, when it's at rest, no problem. But if it snaps closed, which I'm not going to do, what happens is that lock bar bounces up out of the way, and the tip of the blade, I don't know if you can see a nick, but the tip of the blade, as I received it, would slam unceremoniously into that backspacer. In fact, let's see if we can look inside. You should be able to see, even after I've done some grinding on that backspacer, two little cuts, or a series of little cuts, depending on where the blade hits it. It would be right in there. Now I have ground away some of that backspacer, and I've got more to go. I ordered actually a little tiny 1/8 inch bit for my Dremel. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to make that a scallop like this. I'm going to finish it up, make it look good. So I was a lot bothered actually by this condition with the lock bar being sunken and proud, and I knew that was causing my problem when the blade closed. You know, guys, we've been building 110s for a long time, haven't we, in Idaho? I've never had one that slammed shut and ran into the backspacer. You know, we've been making this knife for 50 years. I had a little bit of an argument with my eBay seller about the knife being defective. I was going to return it. It was going to pay the 15% restocking fee. Then I thought, man, I'll send it to Buck and have them fix it under warranty. And then I called Buck's warranty department, talked to a young lady named Ashley in Post Falls, Idaho, and she told me this condition was by design. And she mumbled something about, I don't know what she mumbled, but there's no reason for that to be that way. Look, see, this one's closed and it's dead flush, open, dead flush, and maybe a little proud, but pretty much dead flush. The tang design is pretty much identical on both knives. The locking mechanism is the same. They did change the lock bar a little bit, don't know exactly why. But young Ashley was trying to explain to me a complex engineering reason why that lock bar had to sit sunken into the handle when the knife is closed, and I just wasn't buying it. But pretty much they're all like that. So, and from the videos I've seen, they probably are all like that. And it didn't sound like this was the first time they'd had this complaint. But there's some weakness going on. Because when that blade slams shut, there's only one way it can hit that backspacer. Now the lock bar's in place now, but I can push it down. See it? What that's doing, it's contacting that lock bar about right here with that portion of the blade tang, and it's pushing the lock bar out, bringing this part of the lock bar in, and that allows the tip to hit. Now if you let it close gently, it does not make contact. Only if you like slam it home from here, which I'm trying not to do because I've resharpened this tip about 3 times and it's got a nick in it now. So I knew if I sent this knife to Buck for warranty, it wouldn't go well. You know, they'd probably would have taken the loose thumb studs out and pressed another set in that would have gotten loose again. They probably would have taken these 2 rivets out, removed the back spacer, ground it down, and put it back in. I'm going to do that without disassembling the knife. This knife also came with a nice nick right here in the corner of this front bolster. The reason I know that this is 800 grit satin all over the place is because I've resatined the whole knife. This is exactly what it looked like when it was new, but I had to sand this nick out. I did an okay job. I think that corner looks like it's factory, doesn't it? So then, you know, I had to redo everything. Then, you know, did the old lap drop. You guys ever do that? No, of course not. Got home from work, got out of the car. The knife was, you know, had been my fondling knife on the way home from work, and dropped it on the floor and put a couple marks right here that had to get out, and you know how it goes. So I resatined the whole frame. No big deal. Looks perfect. Now here's another thing, and I'm not going to indict this Lochsa for this, because if you guys own Buck 110s, you know that a tiny bit of side-to-side play is normal. You can just feel it more than you can see it. My 80 model actually has, I guess it doesn't have any up and down, but it's got a little side-to-side play. And this knife, guys, was a safe queen for 30 years. It's essentially a new knife. This one also has just a little side-to-side play, but you know, it doesn't make you, at least not me, doubt the integrity of the knife. If you've handled 110s, you kind of know how that goes. And I sure wouldn't want to forfeit that ability by having too tight of a pivot. So I wouldn't, if I ever wanted to make that tighter, I could press my bolsters together in a vise, you know, do a little ball peen hammer action on the rivet. Don't know if you can see that. Yeah, right here. You can fix that if you want. I'm leaving mine alone. So bottom line, I wanted to like this knife so much, and I still do. It's going to be a user for me. I like it so much in concept, and I have sort of the ability to make it how it should have been, at least in the significant areas. I just didn't want to be without the knife waiting 4 to 6 weeks for Buck to do the same thing I was going to do. And I didn't want to send it back for a refund because I want a Buck 110 Lochsa that's right. I want a one-hand deployable, pocket clippable 110 that weighs an ounce less than the original in S30V steel. I'm going to use the heck out of this knife, guys. Now, having said all that, I think this knife represents a pretty sad state at Buck Knives. They have the icon in the history of locking folding knives. They've been building it for half a century. Now, if a buck collector, a buck aficionado, looks at this knife, he might think, as I did, hey, they put some modern technology into the 110 to make it something guys are going to want to carry and use when they have hundreds of other pocket clippable, one-hand deployable locking folders to choose from. We're going to make it competitive again, not just among collectors, but among users. That's the impression I had. In reality, they made it part of a 50th anniversary set. They produced a knife that's really marketed to collectors. Buck, I think, figured most of these knives were going to get wiped down, put in display cases or safes, and never taken out and used. That's why they gave us thumb studs that are barely usable and get loose in a day. That's why they really didn't care if when the blade closed hard it slammed into the backspacer, because nobody was ever going to use it, you know. They made it look pretty, they gave it features, and they made it, pseudo collectible. I don't really believe in collector's edition knives as being collectible. As I said, I think this knife is far more collectible than this one. When you make a knife to be collectible, it rarely is. When you make a knife to be a knife, and it becomes famous because of its ability and its historical significance, then it becomes collectible in a real way. So this knife, frankly, isn't a great user, and it's not really collectible, although buck collectors will buy them, and they have. It's just a disappointment. It's Buck Knives Incorporated, whose slogan is "The Measure of a Knife Since 1902." Riding the coattails of their own reputation, the reputation built by Al Buck, and they're producing substandard products that aren't really competitive and making some kind of jacked up collectibles. It's pretty sad, guys. But the really twisted thing is this 110 Lochsa is not for sale, and it's not going back. Flawed as it is, I really love it. How neurotic is this video, huh? Anyway, for you buck guys out there that have high hopes for that they're going to get it right, they didn't necessarily do it with the Lochsa. But if you're a buck guy, it's still worth having. I just wanted y'all to know what to expect when you get yours. That's all for tonight. Grace to you and peace, my friends. Oh, we didn't see how it cuts, did we? Shall we? Ooh. Yep. Slices, pushes. It S's. There. One thing Buck can do is craft a blade. Harden a blade and grind a blade. And apparently one thing I can do is sharpen. And that's what you get. So grace to you and peace, my friends, from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. And remember the word and Rob's Buck 110 Lochsa are sharp.